Hello everyone, it is Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon, and today we're doing another post Roaring Skies deck analysis. Today we're going to be getting creative with a build focusing around Skyfield. No, it is not Rayquaza, it's actually going to be a speed Raichu deck, and I really hope you enjoy this. I've been having a lot of fun with this deck. At the moment I do think it is still a fun deck because a lot of things can counter it, and definitely if I was up against a dedicated build that has Wobbuffet or plenty of Silent Labs and stuff like that, I feel like this deck really does struggle. But I just wanted to show off this deck to show off the power of Shaymin EX when it's pretty much unleashed, and when you can just have a turbo list. This really is a lot of fun, and I hope you enjoy it. So it's a full count of Raichu because he is our main attacker. Circle Circuit with Skyfield in play means that we can hit 160. That's 180 with a muscle band, so we're killing all regular EXs with just a DCE. That is the whole concept of the deck. Circle Circuit or nothing, really. That's all we're doing in here. And Raichu's fantastic. I really love it. So we're maxing him out, of course, because he's the only attacker we have in the deck. Basically, this is a turbo list, and we're just playing the 4-4. We're playing 4 DCE and a lot of setup cards as well. So important to note that we can actually turn 1 attack with Circle Circuit now, because we do play Wally in this deck to get the turn 1 Circle Circuit for 180. So this has the potential to donkey X's, which is just like ridiculous. Also, it is worth noting we're going to be using the old Pikachu that we have as well, because if we fail to either Wally or get fully set up, we can nuzzle for a turn and hope to get the turn 2 Raichu. So, supporting cast, we're playing 4 Vulpix. I really like using Vulpix because then we can use this Ninetales. We're using 2 of the Barrier Shrine Ninetales. This is so that we can keep Skyfield in play, as long as we have our abilities online, that is. Very useful. The whole idea of Raichu as well is to finish your game in about 4 turns, 3 or 4 turns, so you don't have to be overly worried about Garbodor, because if it's near the late game, you can end up just Stadium Warring anyway, slapping Skyfields back into play. But having Ninetales for just 1 or 2 turns gives you enough time for Raichu to pretty much get 4 prizes or so, so I do really like having this Ninetales. Also, if you're going first, you can Wally into this Ninetales to lock your Stadium in play. It's more important to get the Ninetales if you're going first and not attacking than finding your Raichu most of the time. So Wally is definitely the clutch supporter that you want turn 1, and I'll explain the supporter line later on. It's a bit wacky, and the whole deck is, but just bear with me, and definitely try this out if you've got a few spare minutes. This deck is so fun. Also, we're playing 2 of the Bright Look Ninetales. This is another really creative idea from me, I think. Because we are running the Vulpix and Ninetales line anyway, it felt like it made sense to play this Ninetales as a way of capturing things out. It means that we can also catch up Groudon, so that really does improve our matchup. Not a lot of decks can get Primal Groudon out of the bench once it's become a Mega. Ninetales obviously is able to do that. It does make us all the more weak against Garbodor and Wobbuffet and all of that stuff, but it's still a very good ability. And the fact is, you can search out a catcher, unlike you can with a Lysander most of the time, so I really like having Ninetales. We're playing Super Scoop Ups anyway for our Shaymins, so being able to use Bright Look 1 or 2 times when your opponent's suffered a knockout, most of the time they're going to throw up a non-EX to try and stall. We can just Bright Look them out and kill the next thing that we want, so I really like playing Ninetales. We've got the bench space, so we may as well. Next up, we're maxing out the Shaymin count. These are, of course, proxies. But the whole deck is centered around this being our draw support the whole time. We're going to be trying to use setup to draw back up to 6, dump our hand back down to a low count, and then Shaymin all over again. This is absolutely fantastic. I think I may show off a couple of turn 1s with this deck, just so that you can see how it sort of works. On paper, it looks like an absolutely crazy deck, and a lot of you may not figure out how it works, but once you see me playtest it maybe a couple of times on camera, it would become a bit more clear to you. But we're maxing out the Shaymin. A lot of the time we are going to be having a bench full of 4 Shaymins, and then, you know, 1 or 2 Pikachu and 1 or 2 Vulpixes. That's pretty much how it's going to look. But yeah, Shaymin, absolutely fantastic. Also with the DCE compatibility, we can use Sky Return to put it back into the hand if we've once again not been able to find our Raichu. The final Pokemon we're playing is one Jirachi. Stellar Guidance, very important. I may as well let you know now, we're playing just the one Wally. Like I say, we're trying to be a turbo build. We're trying to play as few supporters as possible because it can obviously clunk in the hand, and if it's stuck in the hand, we can't use Shaymin as effectively. So we're just playing the one Jirachi because then we can search Wally and find it when we need to, and if we don't, just don't search for Jirachi, basically. On to trainers now, and we play an absolute bunch of them. Another weakness of the deck is that we're playing a huge count of trainers. The idea, of course, though, we will be so far through our deck by the time we do get Quaking Punched, we won't even need trainers anymore. Honestly, for the majority of the time, if we're not hit with a Silent Lab or not hit with a Wobbuffet, we will get a crazy turn 1 and mill through almost all the deck and need to trump card a few turns later. So, one Comp Search just helps out a lot. Playing the one Escape Rope so that if we don't start with Pikachu, we can still get the attack off turn 1 if we're going second. It also means that on those rare occasions, if it is in the hand and we're against a Wobbuffet player and they have something else on the bench, we can sometimes, on that very rare occasion, switch them out. That's why I play this over just a normal switch. For the majority, though, I wouldn't, hold your breath as that being the right counter, but sometimes you can have the out to Escape Rope and just move on from there. Next up, we're playing 2 Trainers Mail. I really do love this card. It's absolutely fantastic. It just gets you into more outs in the deck. Then we're playing 3 VS Seeker to respam. We only play 1 trump card, and a lot of the time we are going to just dump it on the way through our milling stage. So we need to keep track of our VS Seekers all game because obviously our deck will get really low, and because we're only playing 4 energy as well, trump card is pretty important in this deck. So having the VS Seeker, it's mainly for trump card more than anything else. Then we're playing 3 Roller Skates. Roller Skates just gets you into more cards, pretty obvious why that's in there. 4 Super Scoop Up, my favourite card in the whole deck. 50% chance of picking up your Shaymins. You're going to obviously go for this turn 1 for the majority of the time. Also in the late game, or once you've trump carded, when I say late game, I mean like turn 3 or 4, and you've used a Bright Look, you can try and pick up your Ninetales and slap it down for another catcher. It's a really good card. Next up, we're playing a crazy ball engine. 4 Repeat Ball and 4 Ultra Ball. We've got to find a lot of Pokemon. Repeat Ball, once you've already found a Shaymin, is just incredible, to be honest. And Ultra Balling as well helps us get the hand down lower to make our Shaymins more powerful. It just makes complete sense. Once we've found Skyfield, we can absolutely flood our bench, and these balls pretty much become auto-play cards, which is fantastic. Then we're playing 3 Muscle Band. Muscle Band, like I say, is very important for Raichu. We need it so that we can actually get the knockouts, and yeah, that's why we play a 3 count of this. Then onto supporters. You're probably going to think I'm mental at this point, but we are playing the 1 trump card. We really need that. We've got the 1 Wally as well, the Wally proxy, so that we can evolve turn 1. Like I say, if we're going first, we're probably going to look to go for Ninetales. If we're going second, we're going to go for the Raichu so that we can get the Circle Circuit. Sometimes you can happily just dump Wally and go for the VS Seeker play as well, so having the 1 is fine for me. Then we're playing 2 Juniper and 2 Colress. Colress is crazy strong. Even turn 1, after you've done a good amount of things in your hand, you can probably refresh to about 8. Which is pretty crazy, and Juniper's just Juniper. I love having just the 6 count. It means that we never clog, we never clump, and Shaymin is normally getting us 5 or 6 cards each time, so I think this is definitely the way to go. If we could get away with it, and if no one wanted to counter us, this is definitely how I would play the deck. So finally we're playing the 4 Skyfield. Skyfield, even though we have Ninetales, you want to max this out, so that if we're up against something like Groudon, and it gets discarded, then we can discard our own Ninetales and find a Skyfield once again to refresh. Also, it means that if we have been hit with a Silent Lab, we have the highest odds of actually having Skyfield in hand or accessible to us as quickly as possible, so that we can bounce the Silent Lab and then start using our Shaymins. So, very important to max this card out, even though we have the Ninetales. So, as I say, we finish off with the energy count, and it is just 4 DCEs. And yeah, it's all you need really. You're going for the Raichus, and like I say, midway through the game, turn 3 or 4, you're going to use a trump card to recycle those DCEs, and no worries, you probably will be able to mill through the deck all over again with all the roller skates and all the super scoop ups and stuff like that. You should be fine to find your DCEs all over again. So that is the deck, guys, and it really does show off the power of Shaymin. That a deck like this that would look absolutely crazy can just work. A lot of the time you will fill your bench turn 1, and I think there's only one way to show you, and that's to do a little run through. So I'll pause the video now and shuffle up, and then we'll go for it. As you can see, I'm shuffling up because I'm going to be doing a couple of turn 1s with the Raichu deck that I just showed off. And I'm shuffling so that you guys know that I'm not trying to cheat you or anything. I'm trying to do a genuine representation of what this deck can do. I'm going to be assuming that we're not up against a Wobbuffet or up against a Silent Lab or anything like that. Basically, I'll imagine I'm up against a Rayquaza build, so there's nothing nasty stopping my Shaymins from working or anything like that. Also, I'm going to assume that we're going second so that I can actually attempt to get the Raichu attack turn 1 and see how far we get. Basically, if we do end up getting the Raichu, it's probably going to be a high number and hopefully get a donk, or we can assume that we would get a donk if we hit that 180. So I'm going to play open hand for you guys and see how far we can get here. Looks like we've got a pretty decent hand. We start with a Pikachu, which is always good for us, and we already have a Shaymin in hand as well. So if you can't see, I've got a couple of Raichus, I've got a Shaymin, a Skyfield, a Trainer's Mail, a Super Scoop Up, and a VS Seeker to start with. So first of all, I'm going to go for that Trainer's Mail, and we find a couple of good things here. I'm going to go for the Ultra Ball. That means that we can get rid of our 2 Raichus that are going to be stuck in the hand. So that's what I'm going to go for straight away. Dumping. Actually, I'm going to dump 1 Raichu and 1 VS Seeker. They're both pretty dead at the start of the game. Also, it means I have a chance to look through the deck. We need to see if our Ninetales are in here. They both are, which is important. We have Jirachi as well for Wally. I need to actually see if that's in the deck. If Wally's not in the deck, if it's prized, oh, there it is. It means we wouldn't be able to get the Raichu off turn 1. But it is in the deck. We also have another couple of Raichus in there for the Wally play, so that's pretty useful. We've got our Shaymins in here. I can see that we've got 2 more in deck, I think. Oh no, we have all 3 more in deck, so it all looks pretty good in the deck. So we can Ultra Ball, and I didn't actually search a target. That's probably a good idea. I'm actually going to go for another Shaymin, because it's just the safest play right now. So, then we can dump Skyfield, and go for our first Shaymin to set up for 3. We find DCE, Jirachi, and Skyfield. That's pretty horrible. It means we can attach the DCE to Pikachu. It means we can also go for a Super Scoop Up here. And that is ahead, so we can pick up our Shaymin. I could go for Stellar Guidance now and go for the Wally into Raichu. It's pretty risky. But I think we have to, because we're going for the attack. So I'll Stellar Guidance for Wally, for Raichu from the deck to evolve. So now we've got, at the moment, Circle Circuit for 20. And we still have 2 Shaymins in hand. So hopefully we can, off of this Shaymin, get some sort of discarding card, like an Ultra Ball, as we set up for 3 more cards. There is an Ultra Ball and 2 Roller Skates. That was like the perfect Shaymin for us. So we can Roller Skates now. That's a Tails. We can Roller Skates again. That's a Tails as well. We can Ultra Ball away the Raichu and the Skyfield, because we don't need either of those. And now I'm going to find ourselves a Vulpix. It's always a good idea to get a few Vulpix out onto the field so that we can Bright Look onto our next turn. And it also means we can do the Barrier Shrine thing as well. I've just messed up my shuffling. Let's go for that again. And now we can Shaymin for a fresh 6 cards. And there's plenty of more things we can do here. We can bench another Pikachu. We've already got our Skyfield into play, so that's good. We can put a Muscle Band on. Then we can go for another Muscle Band onto the Pikachu on the bench. I'll just make it clear that that Raichu's not into play. That's in the discard pile. I'll try and make more room for our bench, because we've got 5, but there's room for 3 more now. We can go for a Trainer's Mail. And there's a Repeat Ball. Let's use Repeat Ball. And find another Vulpix, I think. So now at this point, all we need is more Pokemon. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this Shaymin gets us to 7, and we can set up for 5 more cards. And there's our repeat ball, so we've actually got the knockout now. And we also have a Pikachu for next turn. We've got the DCE for next turn. We've got a Raichu for next turn. We've got the Bright Look. We don't yet have the what's it called? Barrier Shrine Ninetales. So in that chance, I'll go for another Super Scoop Up. That does get Tails. But as you can see, we've already been hitting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's our number 8th Pokemon that we can put on the bench, if I can make room for him. And we've actually just got the turn 1 180 knockout with Raichu, thanks to the Shaymins and Skyfield. And as you can see, next turn, even if Raichu was to somehow die, we've got the DCE, the Raichu, and if we would top deck for our turn, we actually top deck the Shaymin, but I could comp search then for either a VS Seeker or a Colress or something like that, or Juniper, to get us into a fresh hand of more cards. So as you can see, that's a pretty decent turn 1 for Raichu. We'll go for it again. I'll shuffle up, keep the video going so that you know I'm not trying to cut it out and cheat you guys or anything like that. But that was a pretty decent turn 1, I'd say. Our prizes looked pretty okay. 2 Super Scoop Ups is kind of awkward. It's always good to get Super Scoop Ups going, even though we flipped a couple of tails that game. It's a useful card for spamming those Shaymins. But hopefully you just saw how easy it was for Raichu to actually hit 180. It comes to a point, once you've done the Wally play and you've found your energy, all you need to do is find your Pokemon. And we play a lot of basics, as well as 8 ball cards to find more Pokemon. And when you have Shaymin refreshing your hand, it's just ridiculously easy. So I don't think this deck is incredible, but it is a lot of fun. There's definitely ways to counter this deck. Like I say, Silent Lab, Wobbuffet, Wallying into a Garbodor turn 1 and stuff like that. There's definitely ways to beat this, but it is a whole lot of fun when it gets going. And if your opponent's not playing any of those decks that have troll cards in them, it can really just skyrocket through the deck. And as you saw, I only had about, I don't know, probably about 15 cards left in deck, so even if I was going to get Quaking Punch from then on, I had outs in hand and stuff. So let's see what we can do this time. I'll try to shuffle up as best I can, but we'll see what we can do here. We've once again started pretty nicely. We'll again assume that we're going second so that we can attack with Raichu, and we'll draw for the turn. Straight away, DC, Muscle Band can go on. We can go for a Roller Skates as well. I always like using Roller Skates before Shaymins because it's either a -1, so Shaymin gets more, or it's a +3 cards, so it makes sense to use it before your Shaymins. Here we can bench Pikachu and use our first setup for 4. And we did get a couple of things here. I can go for Super Scoop Up. That is a heads, that's very helpful for us. Then I can Ultra Ball away Ninetales and Raichu. I could find another Shaymin here, but because we have that Super Scoop Up and Juniper anyway, we've always got a backup sort of clause, so I can happily go for a Vulpix here. And then we're going to set up for 4 more cards. Oops. There is Skyfield, and we've got the Super Scoop Up, and that's actually a Tails, so now we're going to have to use a Juniper this turn. Okay, maybe we wouldn't have to use Juniper this turn, because we're holding both Ninetales in hand. This is really awkward, so I feel like we'd probably go for Nuzzle here, and I guess I'll carry on into turn 2 to see how that would play out. So I'll go for Nuzzle, that gets a Tails, so let's assume Pikachu dies. And I'll draw for turn this turn. And then we can go for a Repeat Ball. That was our top deck. So this is turn 2 now, so we've not got the Donk this game. Hopefully this can demonstrate how it goes in the latter turns. It still has good recovery power. So then we can put our Barrier Shrine in, assuming that we kept Skyfield. I mean, if we didn't keep Skyfield that turn, that would be like the worst situation ever, because then we would have to discard both Ninetaleses. But I'm going to assume Skyfield stayed. I mean, obviously, this is all assumptions. It could have been that the Pikachu survived, and or this, that, and the other, but I'm just trying to make it entertaining for you guys. So, there's a Shaymin. We can evolve into a Raichu again. Then we can find Muscle Band. Then we can bench a Vulpix. And go for a Shaymin again. So we've got 6 on the bench now. I can go for Repeat Ball. And I can either find another Pikachu or another Raichu or something like that. I feel like going for Pikachu's worth it here. We can actually use Juniper this turn. We don't need to use Wally because, like I say, we had to waste that turn there. So we got 7. We can Ultra Ball away this Ninetales and the Jirachi, I feel like. And find Shaymin. Basically all we need is DCE at this point. But we've got the turn 2 180. So if we find a DCE. Shaymin is going to come in here. And we've got a Super Scoop Up that we can play. That gets ahead, so I'll pick up a Shaymin. Then we can go for Trainer's Mail. And I guess we'll take a Muscle Band because it's an automatic -1. We can attach that to a Pikachu because we've already got one on Raichu, if you can see that. And then we can use Shaymin again for 2 more cards. We can evolve into Raichu. And there is Trump Card and 2 VS Seeker. This is again an awkward situation. If we've got another one in here, no we don't. So actually we've seen it with Trainer's Mail, so we know it's in the deck. So I can happily Juniper away. It just means that we have to save that last VS Seeker for a Trump Card. But now all we need is a DCE here. And we do find one. So we've actually got the turn 2 180. So that's, you know, not as good, but still pretty decent setup for Raichu. And we did end up with a Ninetales locking the Skyfield into play as well. So I hope you enjoyed those 2 clips of Raichu. One where it went pretty nicely, and one where it was not quite as good, but still pretty decent, I imagine. Hitting 180 turn 2 is not too much to laugh about anyway. The only issues about the deck, of course, is that it's highly reliant on this new Shaymin. And a lot of people are going to be trying to counter that card. So I hope this deck sheds some light on why Shaymin is really good, or why it can be good when you build a deck to be super quick and rely on using setup. Much like in the past when there were decks like Shuppet Donk trying to do turn 1 attacks, it would very much rely on Uxie. And in that regard I'm trying to do the same thing. It is slightly more awkward because we're using Raichu as an attacker. But unfortunately Shuppet and Dunsparce aren't in format right now. So I hope you enjoyed this video, guys, and leave a comment down below about what you think about this deck. It's a whole lot of fun to try out, and if you've not seen the list, please do so. So I've been Joe from OmniPoke, and I will see you guys next time.